Hello everyone and welcome to my mini course. In this first recording I want to show you how to create a simple salon flower with using some of the nail art brushes, just to get you familiar with what we will be using in this tutorial. Is a new florist brush, which you can see, this one on the left, and a liner M brush. So medium size. This one is 9 millimeters, just to get those lines and the detail perfect on the design. Just a little bit about the florist brush. It's obviously a brand new brush. Just to get you a little bit familiar with it, as you can see, when the brush is flat, the head is nice and round to help you create those rounded petals, rounded leaves on your designs. And from the side you can see the brush is nice and flat. If you change the shape of the brush, if you pinch it a little bit, the tip goes a little bit more pointy, which will help you to create pointy petals and pointy leaves as well. So you can see the brush is quite versatile, but the main position that we'll be using the brush for the petals, for the different kind of little flowers, will be the flat position. So make sure that your brush is in the flat position when you're trying to use it in your designs. Okay, so to start with, I've prepared my tip. I've removed the shine from it with my fine buffer, and I'm just going to pop some color on as a background. You can use this design that I'm going to show you how to create. You can use this design with any color background whatsoever, so this design is very versatile. I'm just going to use a very neutral color and a nudie color background, just because we are soon we'll be transitioning from summer to autumn, and nudes will be very popular in that kind of season, but also it will also class as a bridal design at the same time, so you can use it with the nude. It works perfectly. If your client fancies a bright color or a dark color, this design will work absolutely perfect for any color whatsoever. As the flower that we will be using will be white, so white obviously goes with any color of the background. Just a little bit about the product that we will be using as well for this kind of design. First of all, I will be applying a little bit of gold leaf foil. So I'm going to take it out. So we don't need a lot, just a little bit of gold leaf foil, and make sure that the color or the background that you are curing in your lamp has a sticky layer for the foil to attach to it. If your color doesn't have a sticky layer, you need to make sure you apply an extra layer of base coat, for example, to create that sticky layer so the foil sticks perfectly. Okay, my background color is now fully cured, so I'm just going to pick up little bits of foil. So first of all, I need to tear it a little bit into smaller pieces. I want some pieces to be a little bit bigger and some pieces to be a little bit smaller. To help me with the foil, I'm using the Lisbon tweezers. You can see they are extremely sharp and precise, and they also have a rubber cap on the other end to help flatten down any bits of foil on the nail. So just tear it bigger and smaller pieces. You can obviously prepare that beforehand as well. If you know you have a day packed full of clients, you can tear the foil before. Some of the foils, depending on what brand you're using, they also come already kind of teared into different pieces. The one I'm using, it actually comes in like big sheets of foil, and I quite like it that way because it gives me the opportunity to kind of tear it myself and decide what size of pieces I need for my design. So now, having already different pieces of foil prepared, I will be applying around the edge of the tip. So I will apply a couple of pieces first. So I will kind of roughly place them to start with. And on this side as well. Yeah, make sure that your pieces are bigger and smaller, than they're not all identical, they're not all exactly the same size. Make sure that this design looks a little bit more irregular. It gives that nice kind of organic look to the design. So we are trying to place the bits around the edges, but obviously it's up to you. If you want to change it as well, you can do. I'm going to leave a little space in this area just so I can, this is where my flower will go. This is the space for my flower. So plan beforehand and plan where your flower will go. You can place it in any corner. I'm going to place it in this corner, but you can obviously place it in any corner whatsoever. I wouldn't recommend placing it in the middle, just to keep the composition nice and flowy. Try to place it in one of the corners, so almost like divide the area that you're working on, divide the client's nail into like 4 different spaces and decide which space you want to place your design. So if you can imagine, I'm placing my design in this corner, that's why I'm not applying the foil in that corner. Once the foil is roughly placed, I'm going to flatten it down a little. Make sure nothing is sticking up in the air, so it's easy to cover with the top coat and there is no rough surfaces, no rough corners and edges, so client has nothing to pick on afterwards. Okay, the rubber cap is really helpful to flatten everything. We don't have to use our finger, so it's nice and hygienic and we're not introducing any extra dust from the surface, and our work is nice and clean in this way. Okay, once the foil is flattened, we are going to cover the surface with a top coat. You can decide whether you want to use a shiny top coat or a matte top coat. Both will look fantastic. So we are just going to cover the whole surface of the tip with the top coat to make sure all the foil is perfectly covered. And then we are going to cure it in a lamp for 60 seconds. Okay, our top coat is now fully cured. The top coat I've used is the non-cleansed top coat, so it doesn't need wiping the surface after curing. However, if you're using a top coat that does have a sticky layer afterwards, then give it a wipe. Make sure the surface is nice and stickiness free before you paint your design on top. And now for the actual design, what we need: a little palette to put our product on, and we need a very highly pigmented painter gel. The more pigment in the painter gel, the better. I'm going to decant a little amount on my palette. And this is my gel that I'll be working with. You can see the pigment is really high. There is a lot of pigment in the product, which will allow me to create a really good strong design on the surface. Also, you need to make sure that the gel after curing doesn't have a sticky layer, so you can create your flower design on top of the surface of the top coat, and after curing the client is ready to go. This will save you time in the salon. However, if you don't have a gel without sticky layer, if after curing the gel still have a sticky layer, you can of course cover it with the top coat and to protect the design and get rid of the stickiness. However, the design will lose a little bit of dimension, so I would definitely recommend getting one without the sticky layer. It's a lot quicker to work with in a salon, and also it gives you the better result. And I wouldn't recommend doing this design with the gel polish, because gel polish doesn't have enough pigment in it. So I want to place my flower in this area, and I imagine that the center of the flower will be somewhere here. And we need to point all the petals into the center. We always start from the outside edge of the petal and pull it into the center. So I'm going to start with my first petal. If you struggle to imagine where the center is, you can place a tiny dot, and that can indicate where the center is to make it a little bit easier for yourself. So first of all, I'm going to start with a rounded petal. So I'm going to place my brush down, press a lot, and then pull it into the center of the flower. You can make it a little bit wider by going back and adding a little bit more volume to the petal. Did you see how I just pressed my brush and pressed slightly to the other side? Now I'm going to go and pick up a little bit more gel on my brush. And now I want to create a pointy petal on the side of the design. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the point of my brush and the edge of the brush just to create the point, and then I do exactly the same. I point the brush, I press the brush and I pull it into the center. As I go towards the center, I release the pressure. And one more petal down here. So whether you want it pointy or you want it rounded, that's entirely up to you. If you want it pointy, don't forget to use the point and the edge of the brush first. So we've got 3 main petals. Now what we have to do is fill the gaps between the major petals. So what we can do, we can add another one in between here, a smaller one. And depending whether the gap is bigger or smaller, we can add 1 or 2 petals. If you want to overlap petals also, that's possible. What we have to do, we have to press quite a lot to be able to create a little bit of dimension, just like this. And a couple more on this side. You can twist your brush a little bit more as well to make a little bit more of a wavy petal. Use your brush, use the pressure to create a little bit of texture to your petals. And if there is something that you're not quite happy with, you can always go back and correct before you cure the design. Once you're happy with your design, that needs to go into the lamp for 60 seconds. Once that design is cured, we have to create the center of the flower. To create the center of the flower, I'm going to use a Paris tool. A Paris tool is a decoration needle kind of tool, very helpful in a salon. It has a sharp point on one end for teeny tiny dots, mixing the colors for your marbles, decanting colors from the pots onto your palette, and a lot more different bits and bats. And the other end is a rounded end for your bigger dots. That's my design cured. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of a glittery gel and create the center of this flower. If your center is a little bit bigger, you can create a bigger center. If it's smaller, you can create a smaller center. It all depends how much space you have in the middle of your flower. You can also use a little bit of foil inside the center of your flower, or just a few dots. It's totally up to you. I'm going to cure it now for 60 seconds. And this first design is now ready. This is the finished result. Thank you so much for watching and see you soon. On the second design, I'm going to show you a leafy design using similar techniques to what we did on the first tip. I'm going to start with applying a nudie color for my background. And I'm going to show you just how to quickly create an ombre effect with pigment powders. So I will cure this for 30 seconds. So the color of the background is now cured and it has a very light sticky layer, which I need for the pigment to attach to the tip. So I'm going to use this soft makeup brush to apply my pigment. But to make sure it's free from any sort of debris, bits and bats, I first use a lint roller and clean it gently. Make sure all the fluff, all the debris is gone from the brush, because there's nothing worse when you start doing your ombre and there's lots of fluff attached to your brush and that transfers onto your tip. So clean your brush gently and then we can start applying the pigment. I'm using a soft orange pastel color pigment powder. First of all, we need to pick up a little bit on our brush and then apply it to the kitchen towel or a tissue, just to make sure you break the little bits of the pigment gently, and you also don't have too much on your brush. You need a small amount on your brush, not a lot and a lot. So I'm going to start applying the pigment to my tip now. Shape off the excess gently, and we are going to start from the bottom and tap gently the surface of the tip. If you have too much pigment on your brush, make sure you shake it off. And I continue tapping up to about 3/4 of the length of this tip. I don't want to go all the way up, and I don't pick up any more pigment. I want to do this area almost with like leftover pigment powder that is on my brush, because I want to create a nice blend. And now I let the sticky layer absorb the pigment gently. So after a few seconds, you can see the pigment powder is starting to kind of look a little bit shiny and a little bit darker. What I want to do, go back and pick up a little bit more and just tap a little bit more pigment powder from the tip. I don't go all the way up again, just gently from the tip, just to make sure that the tip of the nail has nice coverage. And the rest, we have a nice and seamless blend. Okay, once we're happy with this, we can cover with top coat. Again, you can decide to use a shiny top coat or a matte top coat. It's entirely up to you. One thin layer of the top coat will cover everything and protect the ombre effect. It's nice and gentle ombre, it's not too strong. So for those clients that like really subtle designs, really subtle colors. For this design, I'm going to use the florist brush that we used previously, and I'm also going to use a liner M brush, which is a medium-sized liner brush, 9mm long. I already have the same painted gel on my palette already waiting. I'm just waiting for my tip to be fully cured. Okay, so my background is now fully cured and we can start the design. We are going to start with picking up a little bit of painted gel on my brush. This is how we load a liner brush. We don't want too much product on our brush. We don't want anything like this, as this is impossible to create nice and thin line. So we want to roll the brush and pull it through the product, just gently. Can you see? This way I have a nice and even amount of product on my brush. Not too much and not too little. This is enough to be able to create nice and thin line. So what I'm going to do, I want to create 3 thin lines going from one side to the other. First of all, I will start from around the center and curve the line and go all the way to the other side like this. Now I go back and pick up tiny bit more product. Now second line, it's coming out from the same point, but it changes direction here. And one more, pull it down lower like this. Okay, so we can create 3 to 4 lines depending on the size of the nail, depending on how much of the nail you want to cover. If you want one more, maybe a tiny short one there, just like this. So we've got 4 lines, and as you can notice, they are all different lengths. We don't want them to be exactly the same, we want them to be different. So let's cure this just to set it. So 30 seconds curing time. while the tip is curing, I'm preparing my florist brush. To be able to clean the brush gently and soften the bristles a little bit to prepare it for more work, I'm using a tiny little bit of top coat, and I'm just shaking the brush inside the top coat. That will release any old gel from the brush that I left from my previous design, and also soften the bristles a little bit, which will be easier for me to use on my next design. If you never clean your brush, the built-up product will just stay there, and it will be harder to create designs with such brush, so make sure that you clean it regularly. So what we're going to do now, we are going to create little leaves and petals. We are going to create little leaves in all different areas. So if you can imagine, these are like your branches, and we are going to add leaves to it. So we are going to start with the longest line. Make sure you don't have too much product on your brush. So we are going to place the brush, the tip of the brush in this case, because I want the leaves to be pointy. I place it down and then press and lift off. And now I'm going to place another one around here. Press and follow the line. As you can see, I'm trying to follow the line that I have created. So they're not straight leaves, they are following the curve. If you want the leaves to be a little bit more curvy, we can also go back and pull it in the opposite direction to create more of a point. Make sure you press a little bit to create that see-through kind of textured effect. And now I'm going to place another one here, because we have one on this side. I want another to be right there. Give it a bit of a movement. Don't make it too straight. And as you can see, I'm also creating rounded petals and pointy petals, just so it all looks a little bit different. If there's something that you're not quite happy with, don't forget you can always go back and correct everything before it's all cured. Okay, so now I'm looking for spaces where I can create more petals and more leaves. So this line will need a little leaf on the end. I'm trying to make it a little bit smaller. To make it smaller, make sure that you don't press as much. And we're doing exactly the same, pointing the leaves in different directions. You don't want them to all be the same. Okay, so these two are now covered with leaves. We can add a little bit more shape to those leaves as well by making them a little bit more wavy. If you would like to change the shape of this leaf, what we can do, we can add another kind of, make it a little bit more wavy like that. Okay, and I carry on with my leaves. Either make them pointy or rounded. Make sure you've got a few of each, that they're not all exactly the same. And I think I'm just missing one more on this side. Okay, I'm just checking if I'm happy with everything, or do I need to add any more. And if I'm happy, I will cure it, and if I'm not quite happy yet, I will keep adding and changing things. Because we're working with gel at the minute, we can still change things before it's all cured. I like it when we have a few different shapes of the leaves, that they're not all the same. Maybe I'll make this one a little bit bigger to stand out a little bit more. Make sure if you have one bigger one, then you have a smaller one next to it, and other way around, so they're not all the same shape and the same size. I think I'm quite happy with this one. I'm going to cure it in a lamp. Okay, this is our second design finished now. Thank you for watching and see you soon. On my last design, I'm going to start with applying background color first, and I keep using the same color, a classic nudie neutral color. Nice and thin and even. And pop it into the lamp for 60 seconds. Once the background is cured, I'm going to take it out, and I have applied a little bit of a shiny glittery champagne color on my palette, and I will be using a little sponge for my effect. When you're using a sponge, make sure that you are removing all the fibers first by cleaning it on the lint-free roller. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of my glitter gel on my sponge. And we need to first go into a clean area on my palette and tap it multiple times, just to make sure that the color is kind of distributed evenly on the sponge and it's not just big clumps of color. And we are going to start tapping the color from the bottom by creating a little ombre effect. So the same rule applies as before. We are going to about 3/4 of the way on the tip. It doesn't matter if it's not too perfect. This is just a base for our design. Just to make it a little bit more interesting than just a nude background. But of course, this kind of designs that I'm showing you, they work on absolutely any background whatsoever. Okay, once you're happy, we can pop it into the lamp and cure it. Once the background is cured, we are going to apply a thin layer of top coat to cap the glitter in. And again, cure it for another 60 seconds. While the background and the top coat are still curing, I'm going to prepare everything that I'm going to need for this design. So I'm quickly cleaning my brushes. So I'm going to need a liner brush for this design and a florist brush as well. Again, if you need to clean it, make sure you go into a top coat just to soften the brush and clean it from old product. Okay, so the background is now cured. What we're going to do, we are going to create a flowery design again. So first of all, I load my brush with the gel. And this time, I don't want my brush to be too flat. I want it to be a little bit more pointy. So I roll my brush into that position. And I pick up just a small amount of product on my brush. I don't want too much product on my brush. However, it's not just on the tip of the brush in this case, it's distributed further towards the base of the brush. However, it's just a very small amount. We are going to create a layered type of flower. So we want the first layer of petals to be lighter. In this case, we need to pick up less product on the first layer, for the first layer of the petals. So what we're going to do, we're going to go with the point of the brush and pull it towards the center, and another one right next to it and pull it towards the center, just like this. And here you can see that the petal is going out of the tip a little bit, but it's not a problem at all. So we're creating kind of like double petals. And another one here. One is longer and one is shorter. Okay, so this is the first flower is done. I'm going to create another one in this space. So I'm going to pick up a little bit more of my gel on my brush. Again, not too much. And we are going to work in this area. So I start from the longest petal first. The center, I can imagine, will be somewhere here. Press a little bit and pull it. These are longer petals. They are a little bit different to what we did before. Before we were doing shorter and more volume. And this time we are doing longer and skinnier petals. And they are straight, they don't have much movement in them. They're just straight petals, which makes the design really easy. And one more on this side. Maybe just a tiny something coming off the edge. Okay, we can cure it into the in the lamp for 60 seconds. And once this is cured, I'm going to use a matte top coat now. So first of all, I want this design to be to a matte finish to make it a little bit different. But there's another purpose of the matte top coat, because matte top coat will add almost a little bit of cloudiness to the first layer of the petals. So when I add the second layer of petals on top, the second layer will be visible enough and you will see the dimension and the layers of the petals of this flower. So my top coat is now curing. So what I'm going to do, I will just quickly explain. We are going to do exactly the same as we did for the first layer of petals. However, the second layer will be smaller. The petals will be more on the inside, and we will be picking up a little bit more gel for that layer to make sure that we have a lot of pigment, a lot of coverage from this layer. So make sure that your tip is fully loaded with the gel to be able to see that second layer of petals perfectly. So you can see the first layer is now cured. The top coat is now cured also. So we are going to start adding the second layer of petals. So what we can do, we can add some petals in between the previous one and of course on top of the existing ones as well. You can start seeing some dimension now. Okay, so that's flower number 1, and now we are going to do the same on flower number 2. So I'm going to start filling the gaps first. So it can be just a single petal or a couple petals, same as we did for the first layer. It depends on the space that you have. Don't overdo it. It's best to leave some spaces there as well. Okay, so I'm going to cure it quickly. So my design is now fully cured. All I need to do is add some center to my flowers. To create the center of my flowers, I want to add really teeny tiny dots, and to be able to do that, I'm going to use my liner brush and just start dotting around the center. And the liner brush, obviously it's very, very skinny, and it will allow me to create a teeny tiny dots that I want. So pick up a little bit of gel on your brush and start creating the dots around the center. So that's the first flower. I'm going to do exactly the same on the second flower. And that's the design finished. And here are the other two designs that we've created in this mini course. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for staying with me. And bye for now. Bye bye.